I put on the robe. It's not a costume, it's armor. It tells everyone in the room who is in charge. Not me, Judith Shaindlin. Her, the judge. The moment the black fabric settles on my shoulders, the world simplifies. There's right, there's wrong, and there's a whole lot of nonsense in between that I have to cut through. My bailiff Bird hands me the case file. He gives me a look. It's a look I've seen 1,000 times. It says, "You're not going to believe this one, Judge." He's usually right. I walked into the courtroom. The air was thick with that special blend of desperation and misplaced confidence that only small claims court can produce. On one side, a woman who looked like she'd spent the morning baking cookies and the afternoon worrying. Plain blouse, sensible shoes. Her hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. This was Miss Gable, the plaintiff, a real person. On the other side was a caricature. A young man couldn't be more than 22, draped in a designer suit that was probably worth more than Miss Gable's car. Hair perfectly coiffed, a gaudy watch on his wrist, and a smirk that was practically screaming, "I'm better than everyone here and my daddy will handle it." This, I gathered, was Chad Kensington Jr. The name alone sounded like a country club that rejected people for fun. I sat down the leather of the chair, groaning under the weight of the day's impending foolishness. I opened the file. Simple case. Fender bender. Miss Gable, a florist, was stopped at a red light in her delivery van. Mr. Kensington Jr., in his shiny new sports car, apparently forgot what a brake pedal was for and plowed right into her. She's suing for the repair costs, $4,800, cut and dry, or so you would think. "All right, Miss Gable," I started, my voice crisp. "You claim the defendant, Mr. Kensington, rear-ended your vehicle while you were stopped at a traffic light. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," she said, her voice trembling slightly. The light was red. I was completely stopped. He just hit me. Hard. "Did you get a police report?" "Yes, Your Honor. I have a copy right here." She handed it to Bird, who passed it to me. I scanned it. Officer notes, defendant was distracted, admitted to looking at his phone. Clear fault. Simple. This case should take 5 minutes. I turned my attention to the smirking suit. "Mr. Kensington, you heard the plaintiff. You read the police report. What's your defense? Or are you just here to show off your new tie?" He chuckled, not a nervous laugh, a condescending one. "With all due respect, Judge," he said, drawing out the title like it was a silly nickname, "the report is mistaken and the woman is exaggerating." My eyebrows went up. Oh, this was going to be one of those days. "Exaggerating, sir. The back of her van looks like an accordion." "Did she back into you at 40 miles an hour? Is that what you're suggesting?" "I'm suggesting," he said, leaning into his microphone with the unearned confidence of a game show host, "that she stopped erratically. It was a setup. People like her see a car like mine and they see dollar signs." I stared at him. I let the silence hang in the air. People like her. I looked back at Miss Gable, a woman running a small business trying to deliver flowers. Then I looked at this child in a man's suit, whose biggest accomplishment was likely being born. The internal monologue started a low, simmering boil. This idiot, this entitled silver spoon, no concept of reality idiot, thinks he can walk into my courtroom and peddle this garbage. A setup, I repeated, my voice flat. "So you're telling me this florist in the middle of her workday orchestrated a plan to have her only means of business, her van, destroyed just for the chance to get a few $1,000s from you, a man she had never met before?" "It happens," he shrugged a dismissive wave of his hand. "You'd be surprised." "Oh, believe me, sir," I said, leaning forward, my eyes locked on his. "After 25 years on this bench, I am very, very rarely surprised. But you are aiming for a record. Now the police report says you admitted to being on your phone. Yes or no?" He smirked again, a full, toothy grin this time. I may have said something to that effect to placate the officer. He seemed stressed. I felt a sigh escape my lips. Not a sigh of tiredness, a sigh of profound cosmic disappointment in the direction the human species was heading. Placate the officer. This boy thought the entire world was just a cast of characters in his personal movie, all there to be managed and dismissed. He wasn't just lying, he was insulting the intelligence of every single person in the room, starting with me. And that's a very, very stupid thing to do. The 5-minute case was officially off the rails. This wasn't about a fender bender anymore. This was about a lesson that was long, long overdue, and I was going to be the one to teach it. I picked up my pen. The fun was just getting started. Let's dissect that for a moment, Mr. Kensington, because it's a fascinating piece of logic, I said, picking up my pen and pointing it at him like a weapon. You, a young man of apparent means, are in a minor traffic accident. The police arrive. Your goal, I assume, is to face the least amount of trouble possible. Correct. He nodded, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. The smirk was wavering. Correct. So in order to achieve this goal of less trouble, you decided to lie to a police officer and admit fault. You told him you were on your phone, an admission that makes you 100% liable, all to, what was the word you used? Placate him. Sir, do you have any idea how stupid that sounds? I was just trying to be cooperative, he stammered, his composure starting to fray. Cooperative, I shot back. Cooperative is exchanging insurance information and telling the truth. What you're describing is moronic. It's like telling a burglar, here, take the good silver too, you seem stressed. It makes no sense, unless, of course, the admission wasn't a lie at all. Unless you were, in fact, on your phone. What were you doing? Texting, Instagramming your fancy lunch, checking stock tips from Daddy. The mention of Daddy hit a nerve. His back stiffened. My father has nothing to do with this. Oh, I think he has everything to do with this, I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous level. He bought you that car, didn't he? Yes or no? He hesitated. Yes. And he pays your insurance, doesn't he? That's irrelevant. Answer the question, sir. This is my courtroom. You don't decide what's relevant. I do. Does he pay your insurance? Yes or no? Yes, he finally spat out, his face flushed with anger. The spoiled child was emerging from behind the cheap suit. So you're driving a car you didn't earn on an insurance policy, you don't pay for, and you smash into a woman's work van. Then you come into a court of law and spin a ridiculous fantasy about a grand conspiracy to get your father's money. Do you see the picture you're painting, Mr. Kensington? It's not a very flattering one. I turned to the plaintiff. Miss Gable, let me ask you something. When Mr. Kensington got out of his car after he hit you, what was the very first thing he said? She took a shaky breath. He didn't say he was sorry. He looked at his own car first, at a little scratch on the bumper. Then he looked at my van and said, "Do you know who my father is?" The room went silent. I looked at Chad Kensington Jr. The blood had drained from his face. That was it. That was the magic phrase, the pathetic, cowardly mantra of the entitled. It wasn't a question, it was a threat. A get-out-of-jail-free card he'd been using his whole life. Is that true, Mr. Kensington? I asked, my voice deadly calm. Did you ask this woman whose livelihood you just crumpled if she knew who your father was? I may have. It was a stressful situation, he mumbled, avoiding my gaze. UMM is not an answer, I snapped, my voice echoing in the small room. Yes or no? Yes, he yelled back, his frustration boiling over. Yes, okay, happy. Oh, I'm not happy. I'm not even close to happy, I said, leaning forward on my elbows. I'm disgusted. You think that name your father's name is a magic wand you can wave to make your responsibilities disappear. Well, you're in the wrong magic show, sir. In my world, that name means nothing. Your actions, however, mean everything. And your actions were reckless, and your testimony here today is an insult to the court. I picked up the police report again. You told the officer you were looking at your phone. I want to know exactly what you were looking at. I am hereby ordering you to turn over your phone to my bailiff. His eyes went wide with panic. What? You can't do that. That's an invasion of my privacy. I can, and I just did, I said, a grim smile on my face. You made your phone part of this case when you used it irresponsibly and endangered other people on the road. Now give the phone to Bird. Unless you'd like me to add a contempt charge to your rapidly growing list of problems today. The smirk was long gone. In its place was the terrified look of a boy who had just realized his daddy couldn't help him. He balked. His eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape hatch, a friendly face, a loophole. He found only my bailiff Bird standing stoic and impassive, and me staring at him with the patience of a ticking bomb. Invasion of privacy, he repeated, his voice cracking. It's my personal property. I let out a short, sharp laugh. It wasn't a sound of humor. It was a sound of disbelief at the sheer gall. Sir, let me give you a free 2-minute law school education. Your privacy ended on the asphalt of Elm Street the moment you used your personal property to allegedly ram into Miss Gable's personal property. You then entered my courtroom and perjured yourself by lying about your actions. Your phone is now evidence. It's no more private than a bloody knife at a murder scene. Now, for the last time, are you going to give the phone to Bert, or are you going to find out what the inside of a holding cell looks like? Your choice. I've got all day. He looked like a cornered rat trying to decide which way to run, not realizing all the exits were sealed shut by his own stupidity. The suit, which had looked so imposing when he walked in, now seemed to hang off him a costume he was no longer fit to wear. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. He slowly, deliberately reached into his jacket pocket. Every eye in the room was on him. He pulled out the phone, a sleek, expensive model, of course. Walk it over to him, I commanded. I want you to place it in his hand. Let's have no throwing of evidence in my courtroom. The walk from his podium to Bird was only about 10 feet, but for Chad Kensington Jr., it might as well have been a mile over hot coals. It was a walk of shame, a public surrender. He handed the phone over without looking at Bird, his gaze fixed on the floor. Thank you, Mr. Kensington, I said with saccharine sweetness. Bard, if you would. Bird, a man of few words and immense competence, took the phone. He didn't need a password. The defendant's panic was proof enough he hadn't had time to lock it. Bird's large professional fingers swiped across the screen. I watched his face. He is a master of the poker face, but I've worked with him long enough to see the subtle signs, a slight tightening around the eyes, a barely perceptible arch of an eyebrow. Oh yes, he'd found something. What time was the accident, Miss Gable? I asked, not taking my eyes off Bird. 2:14 p.m., Your Honor. I remember because I had a 230 delivery that I was going to be late for. Bird, I said, do you see any activity on the defendant's phone around 2:14 p.m.? Bird looked up from the screen, his expression unreadable, but his message clear. He nodded once. Yes, Judge. And what kind of activity would that be? A series of outgoing text messages, Your Honor, starting at 2:13 p.m. and ending at 2:15 p.m. The air crackled. This was it, the point of no return. I looked at Chad Kensington Jr. He was pale, sweating under the hot studio lights. His arrogance was a distant memory replaced by the raw, primal fear of being caught. To whom were the text messages addressed? To a contact named Hunter Judge. And would you be so kind as to read the last message, the one sent at approximately 2:15 p.m. into the record for the court? Bird cleared his throat. He held the phone up and read in a clear, monotone voice that made the words all the more damning. Dude, you won't believe this. I was texting you and just rear-ended some old lady in a clunker van. LOL. She's freaking out. This is going to be a pain. Have to call Dad to make it go away. Silence. Utter, complete, and beautiful silence. You could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. LOL. He had typed LOL. He had laughed in digital form at this woman's distress at the destruction of her property. I turned my head slowly, deliberately to face the defendant. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The words themselves were ice. So, Mr. Kensington, some old lady in a clunker van. Is that how you see Miss Process? Gable, is that the setup you were telling me about? Was her freaking out part of her grand conspiracy? Or was it perhaps the normal human reaction of a person who was just slammed into by a reckless child who was too busy laughing with his friend to look at the road? He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He was a fish on a hook, gasping for air. And the last part, I continued my voice, a merciless scalpel. Have to call Dad to make it go away. That's been the solution to everything, hasn't it? Your whole life. Break a toy, Dad buys a new one. Fail a test, Dad talks to the dean. Wreck your car, Dad makes it go away. Well, guess what, kid? You've finally landed in a place where your dad's name is just a name and his money is just paper. It has no power here. Here, there are only the facts. And the facts say you're a liar. The facts say you're reckless. The facts say you are 100% at fault. I leaned back in my chair, the verdict already sealed in my mind. The only question now was how hard the hammer was going to fall. I let him stew in that silence for a moment. It's a powerful tool. People rushed to fill silence, usually with more lies or pathetic excuses. He just stood there, swaying slightly, the weight of the truth finally crashing down on him. The smirk was a ghost, a memory of an arrogance he could no longer afford. He had walked into my courtroom as Chad Kensington, Jr., son of a somebody. He was about to walk out as just another defendant who thought he was smarter than the system. They never are. Judgment for the plaintiff, I announced, my voice ringing with finality. In the amount of $4,800 for the repairs to her vehicle. That's a given. That's the bare minimum of what you owe. I paused, letting him think for a split second that this might be the end of it. It wasn't. Not even close. But we have another problem here, Mr. Kensington. A much bigger one. You stood at that podium, you raised your right hand, and you swore an oath to tell the truth. You then proceeded to spin a tale of fiction, so insulting and so transparent that it boggles the mind. That's called perjury. And in my courtroom, I don't tolerate it, ever. I turned to Miss Gable. Ma'am, I am so sorry you had to go through this. Not just the accident, but the indignity of being accused of fraud by this person. You will get your money. The court will insure it. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes, a mixture of relief and vindication. I turned back to the boy, wonder. You see, Mr. Kensington, small claims court is often called the people's court for a reason. It's where ordinary citizens are supposed to be able to come for simple justice without a team of high-priced lawyers. The entire system is built on a foundation of honesty. When you come in here and lie, you don't just disrespect me, you disrespect the very principle of this court. You spit on the idea that a regular person like Miss Gable can get a fair shake. I picked up my gavel. Your behavior today was not just irresponsible, it was contemptible. Your little text message, the LOL, that reveals a breathtaking lack of empathy, a sociopathic disregard for another human being. You found this woman's misfortune amusing. You saw it as an inconvenience that your father would have to clean up. That tells me everything I need to know about your character, or rather the lack of it. His lawyer, a man who had been wisely silent up to this point, tried to interject. Your Honor, my client is young. Stop, I thundered, cutting him off. The sound made Kensington flinch. Don't you dare give me the he's young excuse. I've seen teenagers with more maturity and integrity in their little finger than this man has in his entire pampered body. He's old enough to drive a 2-ton weapon on public roads. He's old enough to stand in a court of law and lie to a judge. He's old enough to face the consequences, period. I looked directly at Chad. I can't give you jail time for the accident. But I can and I will address your performance here today. For your deliberate and flagrant perjury in this court, I am fining you the maximum amount allowed by this jurisdiction. That's an additional $1,000, and it will not be paid by Daddy. It will be paid by you. You will have 30 days to provide this court with proof of payment from a bank account in your name, only funded by money you have earned from a legitimate job. If you can't, you will serve community service. At 200 hours of it, cleaning bedpans at the county nursing home. Maybe then you'll learn what real people's problems look like. He was speechless. The color had completely drained from his face. The $4,800 was nothing to him. The $1,000 was an annoyance. But the personal accountability, the idea of having to actually work and be responsible for himself, that was the real punishment. It was a concept as foreign to him as quantum physics. Furthermore, I added, because I wasn't done twisting the knife of reality, I am instructing my clerk to send a certified copy of this transcript, including the content of your text messages, to 2 places. First, to the district attorney's office. They may be interested in your admission of texting while driving and your subsequent perjury. Second, to the insurance company. I'm quite certain they'll be fascinated to learn that one of their clients lied on a police report and in a court of law. I imagine your father's premiums are about to get very, very interesting. That was the final blow. The mention of the DA was bad, but the insurance company, that was a direct hit on Daddy's wallet. That was a consequence he couldn't charm or buy his way out of. He had finally created a mess so big that even his father's influence might not be enough to make it go away. I banged the gavel. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. This case is over. We're done here. I stood up, not giving him a second glance. As I walked towards my chambers, I heard him start to protest, his voice a desperate whine. "But, Your Honor," I didn't turn around. I just said loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Save it. You said more than enough." Bard escorted a visibly shaken Chad Kensington Jr. and his now useless lawyer out of the courtroom. Miss Gable was quietly crying tears of relief. Justice. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's frustrating, but on days like this, it's deeply, deeply satisfying. In the hallway, I could hear him on the phone, his voice frantic. Dad, you're not going to believe what happened." I smiled. "Oh, I think he will. And for the first time in your life, son, you're going to have to deal with it. Welcome to the real world. It's tough. You should try visiting it more often." As I sat in my chambers, the adrenaline from the confrontation began to fade, replaced by a familiar, weary satisfaction. I loosened the collar of my robe. Each case is a little story, a snapshot of human nature at its best and more often at its worst. This one, the case of the politician's son, wasn't just about a car accident. It was about the corrosive effect of unearned privilege. It was a story I'd seen play out in 1,000 different ways over the years. Chad Kensington Jr. was a product of a system where consequences are for other people, where money and influence are seen as legitimate substitutes for character and responsibility. His father, the unseen figure in this drama, was just as much on trial in my mind. What kind of parent raises a child to believe that his first instinct in a crisis should be to invoke his father's name as a shield? What kind of lesson is that? It's not just poor parenting. It's a form of societal decay. You're not raising a citizen, you're raising a liability. I thought about Miss Gable, a woman who gets up every day, arranges flowers, loads them into her van, and drives around town to make people happy. An honest, hard-working person. Her entire livelihood fits into that clunker van that Kensington Jr. so casually mocked. He saw a clunker. I saw a small business. He saw an old lady. I saw a taxpayer, a voter, a productive member of society. His contempt wasn't just for her. It was for everything she represented: work, modesty, self-reliance. It was the contempt of the parasite for the host. Bird knocked on the door and came in. He placed the file on my desk. "Well," he said, his voice a low rumble. "That was something." "He earned it, Bird. Every last bit of it." "LOL, Judge." He actually texted LOL. Bird shook his head slowly, a rare expression of disbelief on his stoic face. "Some things you just can't make up." "No, you can't," I agreed. "It's the little details that always get them. They're so caught up in the big lie that they forget about the small truths they've left scattered everywhere. A text message, a casual remark to a witness. They always think they're smarter than they are." I looked at the file, at the photo of Kensington Jr.'s gleaming sports car next to Miss Gable's crumpled van. It was a perfect metaphor for the whole encounter. Flash without substance, crashing into practicality. I knew what would happen next. The father, Senator Kensington or Councilman Kensington or whatever he was, would get on the phone. Lawyers would be called. Threats veiled and not so veiled would be made. There would be appeals. There would be attempts to pull strings. They would try to make this go away. But the beautiful thing about a public record is that it doesn't go away. It's there forever. A transcript is a stubborn thing. A judgment is a fact. And the story, now part of the public domain, would follow that young man around for a very long time. He thought he could mock the system. He thought my courtroom was just another inconvenient bureaucracy to be navigated with his father's influence. He learned the hard way that it's not. It's a place where, for a brief shining moment, the rules are the same for everyone. The rich kid in the designer suit stands on the same level as the florist in the sensible shoes, and the truth, when it's finally dragged out into the light, is the great equalizer. The fine, the community service, the call to the DA, those were just the mechanics of the verdict. The real sentence was the public stripping away of his armor of privilege. He was exposed for, perhaps the first time in his life, as a weak, foolish, and unkind young man. No amount of money can fix that. No powerful father can erase that image from the minds of those who saw it. He walked in thinking he was a prince. He crawled out a cautionary tale. I closed the file. There were more cases to hear, more stories of landlords and tenants, of bad loans between friends, of foolish decisions, and their inevitable messy consequences. The parade of human folly is endless. But every now and then a case comes along that isn't just about the money. It's about setting something right. It's about delivering a lesson that has been deferred for far too long. Today was one of those days. The world might not be a fair place, but for one afternoon in my courtroom it was. And for Chad Kensington Jr., that was the shock of his life. I suspect it won't be his last. Some lessons you have to learn over and over again. And some people are just slow learners. As the day wound down, I found myself replaying the moment. Bird read that text message aloud. LOL. Such a small, insignificant little acronym. 3 letters. Yet in that context, they were more damning than a signed confession. They painted a picture of a soul so detached from the consequences of his actions that he found humor in another's misfortune. It wasn't just carelessness. It was cruelty. It was the casual cruelty of someone who has never been on the receiving end of a bad day, a broken down vehicle, or an unexpected bill. I often wonder what happens to people like Chad Kensington Jr. after they leave my courtroom. Do they change? Does the humiliation serve as a catalyst for self-reflection? Or is it just a bump in the road, a story to be spun and laughed about later with friends like Hunter over expensive drinks? The optimist in me hopes for the former, but the realist in me, the one who has sat on this bench for decades, knows the latter is far more likely. Entitlement is a disease, and it's notoriously hard to cure. His father would likely smooth things over. He'd hire a better lawyer for the potential perjury charge, a PR person to handle any media fallout. He'd pay the insurance hikes without blinking. He would absorb the consequences just as he had always done, robbing his son of the one thing that could actually save him, the painful, bracing, character-building experience of hitting rock bottom. By cushioning the fall, he ensures his son will never learn to fly. He'll just keep falling from a greater and greater height each time. The phone in my chambers rang. It was the clerk. Judge Senator Kensington is on the line for you. He sounds insistent. I almost smiled. Predictable. Like clockwork. Tell Senator Kensington, I said, my voice calm, and even that judges do not discuss active cases over the phone. Tell him if he wishes to communicate with the court, he can do so through a formal motion filed by an attorney. And then hang up. There was a pause. Yes, Judge. He thought he could just call me, as if I were a troublesome maitre d' at a restaurant who could be intimidated into giving him a better table. The arrogance, it seems, was a family trait. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. In this case, it seems to have rolled right under the wheels of Miss Gable's van. This call confirmed everything I needed to know. This wasn't a one-off mistake from a good kid. This was a learned behavior, a worldview passed down from father to son. The rules are for little people. I thought about the resolution of it all. Miss Gable will get a check. Her van will be repaired. She will go back to delivering flowers. Her faith in the system, perhaps a little shaken, but ultimately restored. She's the quiet hero of this story. She didn't scream or yell. She didn't demand retribution. She just calmly and truthfully stated her case. She trusted the process, and today the process worked. For Kensington Jr., the future is less certain. Maybe the shame of having his texts read in open court will stick with him. Maybe the 200 hours of community service, if it comes to that, will open his eyes. Maybe he'll see an elderly person struggling and for the first time feel a pang of empathy instead of annoyance. Or maybe he'll just get better at hiding his phone and craftier with his lies. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him think. My job isn't to save Chad Kensington Jr. from himself. My job is to resolve the dispute between him and Miss Gable and to uphold the integrity of the court. I did that. What he does with the lesson is his business. But today, a clear message was sent. Not just to him, but to anyone who was watching. In this room, your last name doesn't matter. The car you drive doesn't matter. The money in your bank account doesn't matter. What matters is the truth. And when you try to mock it, when you try to twist it, it has a way of snapping back and hitting you right between the eyes. As I took off the robe, the armor, and became Judith Shaindlin again, I felt a sense of closure. The scales of justice for a moment were perfectly balanced. A spoiled young man was held accountable. A good woman was made whole. And the system, for all its flaws, had bent toward fairness. It was a good day's work. It won't change the world. It might not even change Chad Kensington Jr., but it changed the world for Miss Gable. And sometimes that's enough. I walked out of the courthouse and into the evening air. The city was bustling, full of millions of little stories. I had just finished writing one of them, and the moral was simple: don't lie to me, ever.